upstairs bathroom, nothing to do with the rain, but it just makes everything feel great, from our bathroom from upstairs into one of our downstairs room, and every corner.
Okay, we're going live, everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 19th, 2021 Board of Selectmen regular meeting. As we do every meeting, we'd like to start with our call to order. Candace, please.
Candace Bouchard.
Melissa Bird.
Josh Kelly.
Candy Perez.
Sheila Sedlak.
Jack Borg. Stephen Sedlak.
Linda Grappo.
Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next up, agenda review. How are we with that for everybody? Josh, everybody okay?
Yep.
All right, good. Up next is minutes of our regular meeting from July 6, 2021. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Melissa. Any corrections, additions for Sheila?
I just have a question. The last, the last entry about, an inquiry on, Rockwell Street, there was a discussion on that. Does that need to be noted in the minutes that there was a discussion that it has been satisfied?
Linda, which one is that now? Item 13 or, okay.
New business, 12,
13.
13.
At the
13,
end. The last one.
yeah, there, we had just a brief discussion that it's been satisfied. I think it should be just noted that it just didn't drop, that it was taken care of.
Okay.
Anything else? If not, all in favor? No abstentions, so it's unanimous. Next up, citizens' comments. John? I'm sure you know the guidelines, so.
Yeah. John, we are at 16 Superior Street, Winston, Connecticut. I'm on the Conservation Commission, as you well know now. But one thing I'd like to say is I'm glad that people are using the charging stations both at the Bank of America and at the medical facility in South Main Street. They were there again today. It looks good. One thing I would like to see if we can put some money more towards more charging stations. Maybe over there where the Whiting Mill is, and also where the mural and housing. Before we start doing paving in there, and if we have to do any digging, maybe get the stuff in there. Maybe they would work with us. And but the rebates are coming even on the used cars now, so that'll be a big help. So not everybody can afford a new one. So if you can get your $2,000 rebate on a used one, that'll be a big step forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, if not, Josh, your town manager's report.
Absolutely. Good evening, everyone. I'll go over, as I usually do, some brief highlights, but please feel free to ask any questions on items that I don't dive into or that I do. First and foremost, I've been continuing with personnel one-on-ones. Due to the sheer volume of work, this has become a much slower pace. But as I've told you, it's not just the supervisors, it's not just the individuals in town hall that I'm hoping to speak to one-on-one and try to get to know on that personal level. It is beyond that. So I have an opportunity now to start working into the police department and get to know the officers there, as well as the Department of Public Works. So that will continue as we go along, and I've also had the opportunity to continue to meet other local business owners and organizations. I did meet George Nugent, as you'll see throughout this this report this in the past 2 weeks, as well as the president of Northwestern Community College. And I had a meet and greet at the Community Health and Wellness Center with the staff there, as well as others. Enforcement is continuing. That's a theme throughout this report and probably will be for the next several reports. I am happy to say that the Land Use Department is doing a great job of trying to address all of these items as they come in. Sometimes, of course, I'm sure that you are hearing about these activities as well. If you ever have a question about something that's happening, please feel free to ask, but please know that we are taking every complaint that comes in seriously. We are doing our best to make sure that every issue that is brought to our attention is addressed in a proper and responsible manner. We do have, as you've seen on the first week, which is the week spanning July 5th through July 9th. We did have interviews in the afternoon with several candidates for the budget analyst / grants manager position. And I'm happy to say that out of a pool of candidates, we have one that has been selected to move forward in the process. That person has not yet been hired, but I'm happy to say that things are progressing along. So more news at our next meeting. I believe that the Foia training was a huge success. That was held on Thursday, July 8th. We had tremendous attendance. This whole room was filled, and we had to bring in an additional bench as well. So I was very happy to see that, and I think that Tom Hennick with the Foia Commission was able to bring in some great information. So we did have a first tropical storm, and I say that with quotation marks because by the time it got here it was pretty light, but we did fare that pretty well on Friday the 9th, and it served as a great drill for town personnel. So I was happy to have the opportunity to go through the motions. I know Jim Rollins was here tonight and had the opportunity to join us as well for our Unified Command meeting that day, where we talked through a number of different issues that could have arisen, and luckily we're not facing the town at that time. I feel very confident that we'll be ready to address any such storm that might come our way with a little bit more ferocity. We did have a conversation last week with the police department. We saw a presentation from the police department about body cams. Now, body cams are something that, as a part of the police accountability bill that was passed by the state legislature, I believe last year, is going to require all police departments within the state within the year 2022 to have, use, and make use of body cams on their own person. So we have an obligation right now to be working through a myriad of research and different proposals that are coming forward to us from different companies and so on to figure out what is going to be the least expensive but also deliver the best performance in terms of cameras on the police officers' bodies. If you have any questions about that, please let me know, but I am happy to say that I believe that after a lot of research, the officers within the police department have a proposal for you that is going to be drafted over the course of the next month. They want to do a little bit more digging to make sure that they're giving you an idea that is going to be acceptable, reasonable, and promising, and they will present that to you sometime in August. The 508 Main Street Committee is moving forward. That we will have a small gathering, not all at once, but between the hours of 5 and 6 o'clock p.m. this coming Thursday. I will be down there with members of the committee who stop by within that hour to help them see the site before we start discussions. I want to make sure that anybody who wishes to walk through that space has an opportunity to do so, so that they can be all the more educated when discussing it. Then we will have a subsequent follow-up meeting 1 week from that date. It will be at 4:30 p.m. in this room. So stay tuned for those of you who wish to attend. I'll make sure that the board is, of course, copied on information about that as we get closer to those dates. I do want to note 2 corrections on the second page of my report. The first one is on Thursday. That would be July, I suppose, 17th. No, that can't be right. Well, the Thursday of last week, the 15th. Thank you, Candace. I did not have a call with the mayor regarding the Board of Selectmen meeting agenda. That occurred on Wednesday, which would have been the 14th. Additionally, I did also have a call with the labor attorney on both Thursday and Friday. Beyond that, I think that covers most of the highlights, but I'm happy to, like I said, answer any questions that you might have.
You mentioned the cameras, body cameras. Do we have that in the budget for the current year?
The proposal that's brought forward to you by the police department will have proposal that involves acquiring the body cameras without having any net impact on the budget or on the taxpayer for the coming fiscal year.
Thank
I
you.
should also note that because it is a state mandate, the state has put aside an amount of funding. I believe it's 50% reimbursement that they will give for the first year of body cam software and the
Storage.
technology itself, right, storage, so on, and the hardware.
And I should just add that Todd and I met with the police chief on Thursday and had the presentation by the police chief and part of the head of his committee for the body cams, and talked about the police accountability law relating to this equipment, and they have some creative budgeting with their drug enforcement money that they plan on using towards some of this, and they've already been testing the equipment and plan quite an extensive presentation for us, as well as videos, like of the different equipment that they've been testing. So they were, they've really been pretty progressive, I think, and moved forward with a lot of the stuff.
Thank you.
So, I don't have any questions, but I think this would be a good time to put in some of the issues I've been talking to Josh about today. And Josh can also speak to them, and I can speak to them as well. The first issue is that the Highland Lake weed treatment, I don't know if all of you have been keeping up on it and whatnot. It was supposed to be done today, but it is postponed from today until Thursday. And it's postponed from today till Thursday because Solitude, the company doing the application of the weed treatment, didn't get some information to the state and papers signed in time to treat today instead of on Thursday. But these delays, it was supposed to be done in June, like the third week in June, and these delays by the company Solitude, who won our bid as a low bidder, was delayed in getting paperwork, didn't get paperwork until May 28th into the state, and then the state has a permitting process, and there was more things, deadlines that had to be met. So I know that people, and I talked to Josh and Beth Papermaster, the president of the Highland Lake Association, has also been trying to get these things done all the time, and people at the, around everywhere, anybody that uses the lake is confused by the posters that went up. Some went up with, crossed out dates, and then new posters went up. And so they've been confused by that, but please understand that this is something that's been out of the control of the town or the Highland Lake Watershed Association because of the company that was doing the applications of the weed treatment, and then having to go through state permitting. So one of the things that will happen going forward is in the bid processes, we talked about performance language in there, and some other things to prevent from going forward. But at this point, we got a limited time to do things, and are kind of at the mercy of the workings of this particular group. And the second thing that I talked to Josh about, and pertains so that you all know about it, is at Highland Lake, and it's about the Marine Patrol.
Right.
And so Josh is aware of it, and the chief is aware of it, that there have been some Sundays during the quiet hours, which is when most people, and it was identified, remember like 3 years ago, I had that big meeting with all sorts of residents of the lake and all of our heads of our departments and stuff, and it was identified which times were the most important to have Marine Patrol out there. Well, because of, I know a couple weeks ago there was some issues with some other calls that happened during that night, or not enough officers or whatever. So they weren't out on the lake, and some people are at the lake are feeling that the Marine Patrol, especially on Sunday nights, is really important to have. And I think we all agree with that. I know we all agree with that. I don't even think. I know we all agree with that. I know Josh agrees with it. The chief agrees with it. So you're gonna try to do everything you can for that, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So.
As the chief and I spoke about it 2 times today.
Okay. So, but you'll see people because some person up there has organized a little petition about about Marine Patrol and regulations. Please know that the Lake Association, in conjunction with Michael Payton of the DEP, put these huge yellow signs in at the boat launch about the regulations on the lake. I'm sure that the marina is handing out information or has some information over there for regulations on the lake. But one thing that I learned last year, of all my years doing this, and I didn't know it, rental boat people don't need licenses. Those of us that are regular boaters need licenses from the state. So I guess you can go 2 weeks renting a boat without a license, and that, you know, because one time last year, I talked to Jay and I said, what's up with this? And I guess you don't need to, because of the boating industry and buying boats and whatnot. It doesn't make any sense to me, but, you know, they are the state regs over there, so. So I know some people were talking about that. So just want to make sure everybody's filled in, and Josh has been on top of this, you know, from the beginning. The chief's been on top of it too, but just to make sure that residents know that we all are aware of it. Okay. So if you hear anything, you can let Josh know, and that will add to all the issues going up. And also, like, the enforcement agent is up there, and the enforcement agent is doing things with the, you know, buoys, docks, floatable, inflatable things, and then the Marine Patrol has the enforcement side of things. So there's a bunch of different facets, because it's, you know, the middle of summer and everybody's out there, so.
Kenny? Yeah. Josh, I know over the past couple of weeks, in fact, there's been some social media commentary regarding the taxes and the assessments. I think we covered that very nicely, though. You were able to get announcements out there quite effectively, I thought, in most every social media that I saw, explaining why the assessments on the cars went up and what the issues were. So maybe even following through what Candy is saying regarding stuff about Highland Lake, getting that stuff out there too, so that people see this. You've been using social media much more actively and I think effectively than we've seen in the past. And you use not just Facebook, but lots of different mediums, so that I would suggest it's been effective and continue doing it.
Absolutely. Thank you for the feedback.
Anything else for Josh? Or for everybody?
Well, we still have an issue with Sinter Technologies that you're not aware of. They have tractor trailers trying to go up the roads there, and there was an incident on the 15th with a Spanish-speaking driver from Miami who ended up there, and it was reported, so they still have issues. They need to direct them as to an alternate pickup so they don't go on our roads, back roads there, bringing all their trucks up.
Okay, thank you.
Trying to come down Superior Street.
That would be hard for a tractor trailer. All the little roads in there.
Go.
Very hard, since he had 27,000 pounds of weight on the right-hand side, passenger side of the truck. And that's where he would have had to make his turn when he got in the Platt. That whole side could have just gone right over.
Tiny side streets up there. Steve, were you gonna say something? Or-
He covered it.
Okay, he took care of it. All right, there's nothing else. We'll move on to the finance director's report.
Good evening. In the packets was a two-page report detailing the revenues in the general fund through June 30th, 2021, and some of the highlights in that report. Our property tax revenues came in at $24.4 million for the year, which represents 101% of the budget. That's about $400,000 more than we were at last year. And really remarkable considering the circumstances under which, you know, the taxpayers made the payments to the town. I'm very grateful for all of their timely payments. Total revenues came in at $34.6 million. Again, 101% of the budget, which compared to $34.2 million last year, a $400,000 increase. We received the last of our municipal aid from the state during the month of June for the budget year, as expected, $322,000. I didn't provide an expenditure report because we're still working on closing the books on expenditures, and we'll do that. We'll be gathering invoices from vendors and for the next couple of months, and I'll provide you an update probably in September on that. With respect to cash flow, and the general fund had $10.1 million in cash at June 30th. $9.5 million of it was invested. That was in accordance to plan. We did, in the month of June, receive our first installment of $1.5 million from the American Rescue Plan Act. The second installment for an equal amount is expected to come next year in the summer, if it's fully appropriated, so by Congress. So the Hinsdale School Renovation Committee is meeting across the hall. I just reported to them that through June 30th, $1.5 million has been spent on that project. And we've already received our first partial or reimbursement funding from the state, and we'll be applying for additional monies from the state on a regular basis every month or two to obtain the grant portion of that project. We also activated the Bank of America $10 million non-revolving line of credit related to the financing support for that project on June 8th. So those are the highlights from our June activity.
Anybody have any questions for Bruce? Any comments? No, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next up, anybody have any correspondence they wanted to highlight? If not, we'll move to boards and commissions.
Okay, thank you, Candy. We have a number of actions laid out before us this evening. If you'd refer to the chart you got in your package, the first name up for nominations, I would nominate Amanda Hill as a member of the Conservation Committee, permanent membership, term to expire in May of 2025. That's a nomination.
May I have a second?
A second.
Thank you.
Okay, so that will take action on Amanda Hills at our next meeting.
Oh, I thought you wanted to do it now. You're just nominating?
When
now?
you
Just
nominate,
nominate.
you don't second anything.
Okay, I know, but I just thought you was.
And the second nomination would be to the Planning and Zoning Commission, Charlene Lavoy, to an alternate position, term to expire October 2026. So I'm placing that name in nomination. And also placing into nomination the name of Kristen Dowler on the Soldiers Monument Commission for permanent membership, term to expire June of 2025. And then the next three names are people whose names are before you for the first time, so they will begin the consideration process. That's Renata, also goes by Renee Waldron, for membership on the Conservation Commission. Gary, I think it's Paganelli, for Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, permanent membership. And Felix Vine as a member of Planning and Zoning, alternate membership. And so those names will now go through the process of vetting and will be up for nomination at our next meeting. And then we come to the next block, which is appointments. These are names that have been nominated at the last meeting. And the first is that Willie Platt is nominated for appointment to the Conservation Committee, permanent membership, term to expire May of 2025.
Second. So that's,
You got it?
you're making
Yeah,
an
did you-
appointment?
It's an appointment, so this is the final action we're taking on
So
this.
you make a motion to appoint.
Yes,
And Melissa's second.
okay?
All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
And the next name is the same person. Willie Platt, nominated for appointment. I'm moving to appoint Willie Platt to the Planning and Zoning Commission, permanent membership. He has been serving as an alternate member at this time. He'll be replacing Art Melcher as a permanent member, and his term will be from October, until October of 2021. So we will, if he wants reappointment in this October, we will, we'll put him through the ringer all over again. I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
And then on the following page are some reappointments. Would you like to make this motion? You're doing it, man, you're doing it. I'll nominate for reappointment to the Soldiers Monument Commission, Jack Bork, permanent membership. The next term will expire in June of 2025.
Second.
Thank you.
Thank
All in
you.
favor? Unanimous?
And also for reappointment to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, Russell Davenport, permanent membership, next term to expire in April of 2024.
Second? No, second that one.
Okay.
All in favor? Unanimous, thank you.
And lastly, we'd like to acknowledge the resignation of Art Melcher from the Planning and Zoning Commission. I think most of us know Art, a long-time member of the community, involved in many community activities, and was a member of Planning and Zoning for a number of years, and indicated in his letter that he really enjoyed it and learned from the experience. So we'd like to thank Art for his service to the town of Winchester and acknowledge his resignation.
Well, in addition to that, he was on the Commission for Disabilities and did a lot of work around that for town, and did a lot of work for veterans. So Todd has asked that we recognize him with a certificate, and Josh will be doing that going forward.
Very
Just
good.
because of his extraordinary service, like, that's not planning and zoning, because before he was on that, he was doing all those other things, so. Anything else, Steve?
That would be it for now. I'd like to thank Terry Hall and Josh both for the extra effort they put into getting a handle on boards and commissions for us, so thank you.
Okay, under number 10 is new business. A is consider and possibly act on the fiscal year capital improvement budget adjustment. And Josh, I think you've told me a couple people want to talk about that. But I first want to ask a question as you're coming up to talk about this. In the charter, underneath appropriations that lapse at the end of the year because it is a capital item, it says appropriations for capital improvement shall lapse only when the project for which the funds are appropriated has been completed and/or removed by the town acting by referendum. So if something's in capital, are we allowed to move it at this time?
I believe you have the authority to do so. We're essentially asking for a reallocation of the capital budget that was approved at referendum at this past year. It's the fiscal '22 capital improvement budget. Because of some more recent information about bid results on a particular piece of equipment, as well as the need to repair a particular road sooner than we had planned on doing it, which was, I think, planned next year.
Well, we sort of did something, you know, that we got stuck on the charter with back in this, earlier in the summer too, with last spring with the trees and stuff. So I know I'd already forwarded the question about this, and the charter thing is that, are we sure for this? with the capital movement? Because I'm reading in here, we have that, and are we able to adjust without? Because when we do the capital funds, and then when you reallocate them, it's during our budget referendum, so it meets that referendum requirement there. So are we able to? I
mean, we have done, let's see.
Never. I don't think so.
I'm not aware of a requirement that we would have to put this to the public. I mean, the public gave approval for capital in these, for the department, the highway department, and the highway department had proposed individual projects within that total appropriation, and they would just be liking to adjust some of the allocation between those projects. So it's like an interdepartment transfer, budget transfer request like we do, that is permitted by the charter within the same department for the first 9 months of the fiscal year.
I kind of see how Pratt Street could fit into that, but then you're going to make requests for other allocations.
Right.
Right. So I
There's-
just want to ask that question before we start the discussion,
Understand.
because, that. Okay, so Josh, what do you want to introduce it for us?
Well, actually, I believe that Bruce and perhaps Jim Rollins, Director of Public Works, will be presenting most of the
Right.
information tonight.
So, and I need to apologize for some typographical errors on this fund transfer request. There are two pieces to this. One is that in the Department 311, or the Highway Department's capital request for fiscal '22, they asked for $500,000 in annual road maintenance, and they're asking to reallocate $100,000 of that and put it to the Pratt Street Culvert and Sidewalk project, which needs attention this fiscal year, as opposed to what we thought we could wait until next fiscal year to do that. So that's one thing. And so that would be moving $100,000 from account 179-311-100-2201 to account 179-311-100-2107. I had previously submitted it as Fund 1, but it's really Fund 179.
So on this one, is the $100,000 that we would be putting into it part of the permanent repair? Or when we do the permanent repair, the $100,000 will not have had an impact? So are we spending $100,000 now that will be useful and help, or is the $100,000, it'll go away and not matter in the future?
It's going to be a permanent repair to the culvert. It's a permanent repair to the culvert. They was it last year or the year before, they received a bid. Project went out to bid, and it came in much higher than we expected. So we postponed the project. Alternatively, Jim and Bart looked at the situation that now exists and determined that we needed to provide a repair this year, this summer, and that they could do it with town labor, highway department labor, if they could get an allocation of $100,000 for the materials. And this would be half the cost of what it was originally bid for.
I asked that question because I thought I saw somewhere like something that made me think it was a temporary repair, not a permanent repair.
Do you want to talk to the type of repair?
Sure. Is it a permanent repair or temporary repair?
Yes, this is a permanent repair. We were originally going to replace just the end wall with the sidewalk and railing structures, but we decided for the amount of money that was going to cost, we could probably replace the entire culvert with just a poly-wrapped steel corrugated pipe. And so we did the research on it, and while we were looking around, we realized that one section of the structure that was going under the road had failed since the last time we had looked at it. So we've either got to get in there and do a temporary patch on that or just fix the thing right and be done with it. So we're opting to fix it right and be done with it. And it will be a permanent fix.
Jim, will the fix require shutting down the street for a while?
Yes. 3 to 4 weeks.
3 or 4 weeks shutting down Pratt?
Correct.
Well, there'll be detours, right?
Yes.
So Fund 179 is our capital improvement fund?
That's correct.
And right now, it's in just a lump sum of $500,000?
We have $500,000 set aside for general road repair. We had another sub-project called Pratt Street Culvert, and we had dedicated some money to that for engineering in anticipation of, a project next year. So we're asking for $100,000 to go from road repair, annual road maintenance into that Pratt Street project so that we can attack it this summer, fix it this summer.
So would that go on a list about what roads we're taking care of this year?
Yes.
And when are we gonna communicate that? What work we're gonna do this year?
Well, I'm not gonna communicate that I'm doing this job, as we sort of did, it is on the website, but before we get complete funding, it would be.
Well, obviously, but I'm saying,
As soon as we know the facts, ma'am. We've got to get the final on wetlands, we've got to get the gas company diversion organized, we've got to deal with the crazy weather and all the water running through that drain. So to give you a specific date of start, this is premature.
no,
I don't
I'm
think
just
she was
saying an
asking
overall
that.
road plan.
She
I'm not
was
saying
asking
this road, I'm saying all roads.
Because if we're taking 100 from the 500, but is it, well, you're working in the road too, this isn't just the sidewalk, this is in the road.
Oh, yeah.
It's everything, right?
So you're putting the road money there, so I think you're asking about where's the rest of the road money going?
Right.
So the rest of the road money goes for the crack seal, the chip seal, all the other maintenance that's going to happen. We had boosted that part of the budget to allow Jim some extra dollars to do tree work alongside the roads. But we just gave them another couple $100,000 at the end last month to do the trees, so we felt like this was an appropriate place where we could take some of that maintenance and put it into the Pratt Street culvert so that the road would be safe.
Okay. All right, so that's just part of what your proposal of moving money is for. So what's your second proposal?
The second proposal is, there was the fiscal '22 budget included an appropriation of $250,000 over a 4-year period to purchase a payloader machine to replace one that is that's at the end of its useful life. And so when the Highway Department went out for bid and used Sourcewell, which is an acceptable bidding function, the bid for a machine that would satisfy all of their specs came in at $202,000. So $48,000 less than what was included in the budget. And what we're asking for is to take a portion of that savings, $26,500, and add it to the Public Works truck project to make it a, well, I think the description of that is in the resolution there, to enhance one of the trucks that was going to be bought this year with some additional equipment, and then taking that's $6,500 of that $26,500, and then the other $20,000 to be used to provide 2 additional vehicles to the Public Works department to allow for replacement of the Public Works Director vehicle that he's using right now with a used SUV, kind of like what we acquired last year for the building department, and as well as a similar vehicle for the engineering. The engineer. Both of them need to go out from the office and view sites and such, and currently the engineer is using his personal vehicle because there's not another one available. And we want to resolve that situation because he's a town employee, and when he's on town business, he needs to be using a town vehicle for liability purposes. So that's the second part of this budget transfer that we're looking for. No additional dollars from the highway department. Capital improvement plan, it's just a reallocation of some dollars that were included in the appropriation, approved at referendum, just allocating it to some different projects.
Well, I'm going to ask a lot of questions because of what we went through during the budget season. You know, back in last March and last April when we were deciding a lot of things. One of the other things I thought about this weekend is the past 2 years before this year, we asked for you to have some general quotes about the plow trucks and the specs and have all of that ahead of time. Did we have those kind of quotes, specs this year for that payloader?
My recollection was we did for that particular brand or vendor.
So when you go through the process, they don't typically give you the final price until you're really ready to move on a purchase. They give you budget numbers, partly because when you're looking at these things months and months ahead of time, they don't know what's coming up. And they never want to be stuck in a position where they gave you a budget number that turned out to be too low. So we go with the numbers they give us, and you assume a little bit for the attachments you want to do, and it's as much an art as it is a science. And then when you are actually ready, it's gone through the budget process, you're approved, you get down to brass tacks, and you have, each vendor sees that when they supply their machine for a demonstration, because we tried 5 or 6 different manufacturers to see which one we thought operated the best and suited our needs. You have to make sure they fit into the garage. That eliminates some. It makes you tweak your sizes somewhat. But when they see the other vendor's machine in your yard, all of a sudden they sharpen their pencils a little bit. So, and then you go to the Sourcewell bids or the state bids, and the numbers just come in different than what the initial estimates were. And fortunately, they come in lower, not higher. But when we see that, we're just overjoyed.
Well, I know back, when we took so much money out of fund balance before, Bruce, you were concerned about the amount that we were taking out. Also, the other thing we talked about during that time was we talked about that we don't finance through a bank or the company anymore. We self-finance it. So if we were to do all this, then we would be front-loading a lot of money out of fund balance because the payloader was going out over 4 years. I'm assuming the payloader will still go out over those 4 years, but the extra $48,000 is going to go out in the first year on these trucks. Is that correct?
Yeah, so as part of the capital improvement budget, when these large pieces of equipment, which because they cost so much, we break out the appropriation over a multi-year period. In this case, this piece of equipment, the appropriation is coming out of the capital budget over 4 years. We will pay, it's our recommendation to the town manager that we will, between myself and Cindy as the treasurer, because of the low rate of return on our cash right now, that we will pay for this this machine all up front in cash. We have committed to future capital improvement budgets appropriations to pay for the entire machine, even though only 25% of its cost is in this year's budget. But this is what we've been doing, fairly regularly with larger machine purchases. So in terms of this cash belongs, or the cash is going to come out of the capital improvements fund. It has a cash balance assigned to it based on the appropriations that have happened over the years. and that we're waiting to, spend some of this money, as projects are multi-year projects. And so there's sufficient cash there to pay for the machine up front. And this would just mean we would spend $48,000 less in cash this year for that machine than we would have if we were spending the entire appropriation. So it does free up some extra dollars that could be used for these other pieces of equipment, and that's what the highway department is asking for.
But you'd be spending the 48 this current year and not over the next 3 years.
That's right. We would take the
Payloader.
take the adjustment out of this year's 25% budget allocation. Yes, we would still have to include in the next 3 years an appropriation to pay for the rest of the machine that wasn't paid for with this year's appropriation.
And then all of the extra expenses for extra vehicles, because we're adding vehicles to the fleet, right?
That's right. In this case, we're proposing to add 2 additional vehicles to the fleet, 2 used SUVs.
Right, so in addition to what we have now, and 2 additional to the count, right? So what about all the insurance, tires, gas, all that?
So with respect to insurance, my estimate is that it will cost an extra $1,000 a year for those 2 vehicles to be added to our liability, auto, and property policy. And the budget that I have for that line item has the ability to absorb that extra cost. One of the other offsetting things is that we all the time are adding vehicles and taking vehicles off that insurance policy as we retire vehicles, so there's always a little bit of give and take on that. But we also are getting this year a dividend from our insurance group, KERMA. This year they notified us this last week that we'd be getting $36,000. That's included in our revenue budget for the general fund. Because it was a much smaller number last year, we only budgeted $15,000 for that this year in this year's budget. So there's about $20,000 more coming this year in that revenue line item, which I think be more than offset any extra costs that we'd end up with on insurance for these 2 vehicles. I think Jim estimates that the 2 vehicles would only come in at about 4,000 miles a year. And so in terms of gas and tires and maintenance, I think it's going to be minimal. And you think it's going to be able to be absorbed in your highway department budget for fiscal '22.
I'll let others ask questions, please.
I think I heard you say that currently the people who would be using these 2 vehicles are going to be a Bart and you. And so it's your truck and Bart's truck that we're getting 2 new trucks for. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And currently you have a truck. All right, but Bart does not. Correct. Okay. So how does Bart get around? Using his own vehicle? Correct. All right. Do we reimburse him for his mileage?
No,
Why not?
he just never puts in for it.
Okay.
He's kind of
We have a policy that allows that to be
Selfless.
reimbursed.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I think you just said you're anticipating that each of these vehicles would be putting in about 3,000 miles?
Yeah, 2,000 to 4,000, yeah.
3 or 4? So if we were reimbursing about 4,000 miles a year at what's the current rate? Pretty close to 60 cents per mile. It's $2,500 a year. Okay. And so we could do it that way. Is that something else that's possible?
We could. It's not really ideal for a town employee to be using his own vehicle, especially in the way that we use them. We're on the sides of the roads. We're, on-road, off-road, carrying tools, some town employees, town manager is not exactly, doing that kind of work. It's just harder on a vehicle. To me, it doesn't seem fair, so didn't really want to go there.
Do we have other, Josh, you have reimbursement, right, for your vehicle?
I do not.
You do not. Do we reimburse anybody in town for the use of their private vehicles?
I think the recreation director gets a reimbursement for miles. We have, when employees in town hall go for, well, this happens almost in every department. When they use their personal vehicle to drive to a course offering out of town, we reimburse them miles for their, for that travel. I can't recall too much else that we reimburse for in terms of mileage. It's mostly for educational purposes or, town clerk goes to a conference every year. We reimburse her mileage, I believe.
I can understand if you're going out to like if Josh is going to Hartford, do you get reimbursed for traveling to Hartford?
No.
Would you use a town vehicle to do that?
It's a possibility. Usually there are not enough vehicles available for me to be able to do that. I wouldn't want to take it away from one of our enforcement officers in the land use office or some other department. And I think that that's exactly the same situation that's happening in the Public Works office. I believe that Bart Clark, our engineer, would be thrilled to have the opportunity to take advantage of having a town vehicle, and it would be safer and it would be less of a liability to the town. However, he's not going to take it away from somebody who is out conducting that road work. So I think that up until this point, without other monies available, he hasn't wanted to be selfish and put this in, but I do see the merit in the suggestion that Jim makes by requesting money for this vehicle. And Jim, my question for you is, do you believe that a used vehicle of the nature that you are looking to buy for an amount of $10,000 or less would last more than 4 years? From a break-even perspective, if you're talking about $2,500 a year, it makes sense that you need to at least have this vehicle last you 4 years.
Yeah, I don't have any doubt about that.
Okay.
Does this now become policy for these positions?
That's a good question. That's a good question. For the most part, it
Or are
is.
they just town vehicles that anyone can use, sort of thing?
Well, and from my perspective, coming in and with the conversations that I've had so far, and I don't have all the history, so somebody please correct me if I'm really off base, but at least what was expressed to me in terms of my use of the vehicles is, yes, they are all town vehicles. We need a pool that's sizable enough to be able to manage whatever's happening at one point in time. It's not a one-to-one ratio by any means. For example, I've been speaking with the land use office quite a bit about their vehicles because they've recently added a new person. And there's a little bit more of a strain going from 3 people with 2 cars to now 4 people with 2 cars. Those are people who are out on the road a lot, and the only 2 departments that are out on the road more are the police department and the public works department. From my perspective, it's policy to make sure that our employees, from my perspective, a good policy would be something to aspire to. It would be to have enough vehicles for all of our employees to make use of them as needed. And in this situation, I think at a cost-effective rate, we have an opportunity to make that possible for the Public Works Office.
So I have a question about planning.
About what?
Planning,
Okay.
because again, going back to the budget season, because I'm worried in our out years with the squeeze on our budget and the forecast that you did, Bruce. And I just see us, we just approved contracts, we've just approved additional monies in contracts, not just for raises, but for other pieces of contracts. We see other increases coming through with the stuff that the town has to procure just from the rising cost of inflation out there. Fuel is up, like everything's up, so I'm worrying kind of like on the out years. So I went back to the planning documents today because I wanted to be sure, because I went into your department and went into their CIP plan in the little back and the binders we get with all the requests and stuff like that. So were these vehicles, because now you're expanding vehicles for individual use by specific staff. Were these requested in the past and you couldn't have them, or is this something that just came up? I mean, you know,
So I wouldn't necessarily say we're requesting it for specific staff. We do call it, the director's vehicle, we will call it the engineer's vehicle. That doesn't mean that when the foreman, has a truck that's in getting an oil change, that they're not gonna take it. They're fungible, they move around, we do that all the time. So it's not quite, that simple. But as far as planning, my first draft of the budget included certainly more capital improvement equipment than got pushed through. I do not recall whether these two vehicles were on it. So I can't answer that exactly, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were, whatever. We always do without something, and, we said this is how much we're getting. We prioritize the loader and the director's truck. We're trying to make some improvements to make the efficiency of the crew better. So to overcomplicate a complicated situation, the building and grounds maintainer currently has a pickup truck. He could really use a small dump truck. So we're gonna move his vehicle to the crew that's out on the streets, replace that vehicle with a pickup truck with a dump body. That was the money that was set aside for a director's truck. It just didn't seem worth buying, and the reason I didn't get a truck last year when we allocated and we bought a paving box is it was just better for the public. They got more for their money. A $30,000 pickup truck for me is not the best use of money. A used vehicle for me is more than adequate. So we're trying to make what we think is the best value for whatever capital dollar we're spending. And, when the money gets changed from what we asked for to something else, you make your best judgment on what that is gonna do. We decided on this. We found out, okay, now we have this much money. If I had 140,000 left instead of, 40, would I do 2 used SUVs? I don't know. Maybe I would, do a different piece of machinery. I don't know what I would do, but this is the reality we find ourselves in. So my decision was the best use of that money would be to fill these 2 big gaps. And that's why we proposed that.
so are there any other questions? Anyone?
I don't know, I remember we were budgeting that any extra money that we had that was gonna go back to the fund balance because we had taken out from the fund balance, because we're trying to fill that hole for next year, so we didn't have another year. So I don't understand how we're adjusting, a capital improvement plan to me kind of mid-year. I thought that's done like in the budget process, and then we reallocate, any completed projects. So I don't see that we have, I don't understand this.
Anybody else have any questions?
But for clarification, Candy, could we break up the decision here to the annual road maintenance for Pratt Street, make that one vote, and then the second vote on the use of the 26,500?
Oh, I think we could do that, yeah.
Would that be acceptable to Josh, and would it work better to have that, or do you need it to have it all in one vote?
It can be 2 votes. It can certainly be 2 votes.
The only thing I would make sure that we do is I'd like to just have this, capital product approach, capital plan, capital project authorizations. I just want to be double sure that we can move this. I can see it because it's a street, and I can see the attachment to the street. And then I would want to make sure that we could take the street money or the payloader money to the trucks, just because of, I didn't look it up before tonight. I had asked the question before tonight about the charter, but when I was sitting here doing it before, I wanted to double check again on this. So I would make any of our motions contingent upon, checking on this charter item and making sure that we're okay to do it, unless you've checked already.
No, I have my own interpretation. From my perspective, I believe that Section 906, what you were referring to before, only specifies when capital improvements shall lapse, and it doesn't state really whether or not you can transfer capital improvement money into another account. By not stating anything about that in this section, that doesn't necessarily give permission or denial to the question. But from my perspective, this section does not pertain to what's happening tonight in particular. This is only talking about when capital funds lapse. So a little more research perhaps is necessary, but we can certainly get that as long as a vote is contingent upon a town attorney review.
So what does everybody want to do? I mean,
I would support both moves. I think, and I understand your concern, and I think Kevin Elgin ought to take a look at our authority to do that. But I think I've heard of staff employees being creative, trying to fill a need, and heaven knows all of the years that we went without. And I think this is a reasonable kind of request. I just hope the trucks aren't green, the SUVs aren't green. Inside joke. But I would support both of these actions.
And I would agree with Steve as well, that I think that, I mean, I would be ready to vote on both. I mean, the only question is, do you know what you would do with the other 28,000 that you then have left, right? Am I wrong that there's still a little bit of extra?
There would be, but we don't have any plans to use that at the moment, so it remains appropriated for that, that payloader account.
I mean, I
Once-
guess, yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
once- Sorry, go ahead, Melissa.
I would just say that we had already allocated the money to the department. So in my mind, I totally understand, making sure that it's going to a proper place, but the money, in our minds is spent. So I feel like if there's a need, that, that's not a bad thing. So I agree that if we have that, that's a positive thing.
so Bruce, in your estimation, knowing where the end of this year is going, and based on what we were saying back in April in terms of, approaching the 16.7% in our fund balance, our rainy day account, knowing that we have a huge road project that we want to attack coming forward, knowing that we have all these budgetary items, school needs, and everybody coming forward, are you comfortable that we're transferring money in this current fiscal year, and that this past fiscal year will be able to cover some of our depletion in that fund balance? And then are we set up in the future, because nobody wants a tax increase going forward?
No, good question. I mentioned in my finance director's report that the revenues in the general fund for fiscal '21 have come in at 101% of budget. And that means that there's about $500,000 that will be replenishing from the revenue side, replenishing the general fund. And I don't know where the expenditure side will come in yet, but I do not expect the expenditure side to exceed the expenditure budget. So I see at a minimum that I expect something on the order of $500,000 will boost the general fund balance when we conclude the audit for fiscal '21.
Any other questions from anyone?
Just one more clarification. And just the 10,000 for the two vehicles, we're not expending that over 4 years. That's all this year.
That's, yeah.
Will we be seeing something like that for these vehicles in subsequent budgets?
No, there will be, this is what's, good question. This is a sole, single price, single appropriation for a budget to purchase a used SUV for, one for the director and one for the engineer, to allow them to do their work
And as you say,
separately.
should last about 4 years.
At least 4 years, yeah.
Okay. There is tires, maintenance cost that will be added to the budget for these extra vehicles, but, right, gas,
Yeah, in this year, you want to talk to your?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's added to the budget. We will make do with the budget that we already have. You know, we budget $70,000 a year for vehicle maintenance. You know, that's equipment, that's everything from chainsaws to payloaders. You know, it comes out, there's 45 actual pieces of equipment and vehicles. You know, it's like $1,500 a piece, which is, you know, not that much money. So we stretch it hard. At the end of the year, that money is gone. You know, we work that hard to keep these things on the road as long as possible. Our big dollars aren't from cars and pickup trucks. It's from dump trucks, payloaders. You know, you're buying heavy, you know, you're buying specialized parts. That's where your money goes. These little vehicles are very inexpensive to maintain.
fair enough, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure you've done your due diligence with these SUVs, but with the shortage of SUVs and the cost of used vehicles, are you going to be able to find something for $10,000 that's going to get you through the next?
We believe we can, yeah. We did it, you know, the one we bought for the building department a couple of years ago has, I don't think we've done anything except oil changes, and that was $10,000. Great vehicle. And you know, before proposing this question was asked to me, so I've been looking around, asking around, seeing what people are spending. They're out there, and we're not gonna buy one, you know, for $10,000 that's not any good. We're gonna wait, you know. We'll do the right thing, and I think there's plenty of good vehicles out there in that price range for the kind of work we do. Would I want to commute to Hartford all day, every day, in a $10,000 SUV? No, but for the 4,000 miles a year that we're going to do, you know, in town, bombing around.
So it's an
I have no
SUV,
worry.
not a small truck.
Right. Yeah, it's like a little. The one we got for the building department was a Jeep, you know, four-door Jeep kind of wagony kind of thing. You know, efficient, inexpensive to operate. Just, you know, we can keep the tools we use all day in there all the time. You can roll drawings out inside instead of on the tailgate where they're getting covered with rain and you know, the glare of the sun. It's just the right tool for the job.
Thank you.
Do you guys have an updated vehicle?
Inventory?
Yeah.
Mark Douglas keeps it, so he's got that. So, yeah, we do track it. We've got an inventory. Every one of those vehicles has a plate, and Mark tracks and monitors all the plates being used.
I know we had the inventory before. I didn't know if we had the updated one.
Yeah, I don't think I've supplied it to you, but it's something we do at the end of every fiscal year. That we review our inventory and notify him of which vehicles can be disposed of. And we disposed of a few this past year. You know, I mean, you want to talk about your 2006 Ford trucks and how you keep them running?
Yeah.
Do you all want to see that, or do you want to?
No.
Huh? No. Do we need that information to make a decision, everybody? I mean, we want to torture you, but not that much.
Well, I mean, one of the trucks impacted here is the truck that Jim currently
Right, but I
drives.
don't think the issue is replacing Jim's truck. We all know Jim's truck
Yeah.
needs to be switched. I mean, we knew that, that's why we allocated it in the capital budget and then the budget, and we agreed that that was a good thing to move on. I think I'll just speak for myself now. We're taking and adding additional vehicles to our vehicle list. And going forward, there's lots of either a policy issue, whose truck uses it, and the cost of that going forward. And then my other pieces it isn't about necessarily, Jim, your department. It's about the financial conversations, again, that we had in April, the financial conversations about going forward, the whole idea, and then there's also, can we move it? You know, so I'm on like, I'm not so much on the justification that you're showing us for these things as much as I am on the financial and the actual items to move it. So, do I know you need a new truck? Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt you've been doing the appropriate things. You're riding around in a little rust bucket truck. I mean, you can see it all rusted out on the sides. And so there's no issue that you need a new truck, whether it's used or new or anything like that. So please don't think that we don't think that I always know that you have the best interest of everything in mind. I know that, you know. This is maybe Bruce scared us a lot this past spring.
No, it's a good idea to be prudent and cautious. I think, I know more at this point than I did 2 months ago when we were talking budget, especially how this year is going to end up, fiscal '21. So I'm encouraged that we are able to, from the revenue side, boost the fund balance again significantly. Will allow us to give us more flexibility going forward, so.
So with that, let's break it up into two motions.
Yeah, I've got a motion if you want it.
For Pratt Street?
Yes,
And do you have the contingent on?
yes.
All right. Well, I only want Sheila to write it once. I don't want her
I'm
to have
going
to
to
write
give
it
this to
twice.
Sheila.
Okay.
I move that we approve the allocation of $100,000 from the annual road maintenance capital activity fund 179 to capital activity fund number 1, Pratt Street Culvert and Sidewalk Project, comma, contingent upon review by the town attorney.
Can I just amend that, instead of Fund 1, it's Fund 179 for the Pratt Street culvert. That was my typo, typographical error. It's from 179 to another 179 account.
Very good.
Is there a second for that, please?
I'll second.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other discussion on that? If not, all in favor of the Pratt Street culvert? Unanimous? Thank you. I'm assuming you have a second one?
Pretty much. I move to approve the reallocation of $26,500 in the capital fund regarding payloader to capital fund number 179 regarding public works truck dump body, $6,000, gotta get the numbers there. $6,500, and Public Works Director SUV, $10,000, Public Works Engineer SUV, $10,000, contingent upon review by the town attorney.
Linda seconds it. Any other questions on it? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on possibly an easier topic, but maybe not. Josh, you want to talk to us about Sustainable Connecticut?
Yes, I will. I'm very excited to bring this proposal forward to you all tonight. This is a little background. I've been a part of the administrations for 2 different towns that have taken on and become a part of the Sustainable Connecticut program, and so I'll have the opportunity to share some of that with you tonight. But what I'm proposing to you is that the town of Winchester join the Sustainable Connecticut program. This is a program that's free of charge to municipalities to join. It's a partnership between Eastern Connecticut State University and CCM, the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, which we're a part of. And it really has 3 different items that I'd like to highlight for you, 3 different offerings for us that I'd like to bring to your attention. The first is that it provides a roadmap for sustainability and success in municipal operations. So I'll draw your eyes. I believe that there are 5 different sheets of paper that were given to you as part of this agenda item. And the latter 3 are a small, they call it a brochure, but a short 3-page packet about the highlights of the Sustainable Connecticut program. And the goal there are really 2 sides to Sustainable Connecticut. The first is that it provides towns with an opportunity to become certified in sustainability. So that really gives us 2 different opportunities. First and foremost, they have a list that you can see on pages 2 and 3 that identify a number of different actions that municipalities can take in order to try and become more sustainable. Sustainable Connecticut is really focused on a very wide definition of sustainability. It's not just conservation. It's not a matter of putting in some electric vehicle stations, although that is an item that is part of the Sustainable Connecticut roadmap. But it's trying to make sure that we're looking at sustainability on the whole when it comes to culture, when it comes to our roads, when it comes to our fleet management. That's actually an item here that they will help us move through and perhaps even better our fleet management system, just as an example. And there are a number of other, as you can see if you go through these these 2 last pages in the packet, everything from, like I said, culture up through sustainable energy practices. So, like I said, the first of these 3 opportunities is that it provides the town a roadmap moving forward on how and why we may want to look into different policies or even particularly move away from other policies. I think that Sustainable Connecticut does a great job of taking information from the 122 towns that are participating right now and making sure that that's shareable to other towns. So, for example, when I was on the RTM in Waterford, the RTM passed and adopted a resolution that put the town into the Sustainable Connecticut program. And since then, every action that the town has taken that has been a part of the list of actions that you see here has gone into a database. And any documents that have been created as part of action steps that have been taken by the town are uploaded, and towns that are part of Sustainable Connecticut have an opportunity to see what those documents look like. That gives us an opportunity, if we become members, to get in to see what does another town's fleet management system look like? What does their spreadsheet look like? Does it make sense? Is it workable for the members of the town administration, and does it make sense to the lay person out in the public who decides to read through it? And that's just one example, but there are similar documents in all of these different categories that we can use to help us boost our economy, to make sure that we have an understanding of how to best pursue economic development on homes and on buildings that the town currently possesses that we don't have a plan for. So like I said, I'm just giving a few examples, but I think that Sustainable Connecticut does a great job of rounding up that information and making sure that we have more resources at our disposal for making some progress in these areas. The second item is that it is a certification program. And the certification, I'll be blunt, it doesn't give us much that's tangible. It provides us with that roadmap that I already discussed. And the second thing that it really gives us is public positive recognition. It's a recognition program. It's meant to give us an opportunity to demonstrate that we are already taking sustained actions, steps towards sustainability, that we want to take more steps towards a sustainable future, and that we're going to commit to a number of steps towards a sustainable future. So I think that noting that this has a capacity for Shaw and any other members of the press corps at large that might be listening in, I hope that if we take on this, we'll have an opportunity to obtain some certifications that will be able to be reported on. And third is an opportunity for funding. Sustainable Connecticut offers matching grants on a myriad of different projects, activities, opportunities that are only available to member towns. So, for example, they will provide up to 50% funding. I know in one town over in the eastern side of the state, they had an opportunity to put in a small solar installation, much like the one earlier you had been talking at the school building committee, Candy, an educational solar array that helped kids see how much solar energy was being produced by the array and really helped them better understand renewable energies and try and learn about it. So they were able to get 50% funding for that project, and I've heard of a number of others as well. These opportunities aren't available to us right now because we're one of a handful of towns around the state that is not already a part of this program. So, like I said, this is a free program. There are a number of other reasons listed as to why we should participate, and certainly I think that the actions speak for themselves. But a couple clarifying points that I want to make before I turn it over for questions. The first big thing that I'm guessing is on your mind is, are there any commitments that we're making by joining this? The answer is no. We have an opportunity to join Sustainable Connecticut, and at your next meeting, if you really wanted to, you could elect to leave. There's no charge, there's no fee, there's no cost. Or you could choose to simply remain a member but never pursue a certification or never apply for a grant. That gives us the opportunity to have access, but does not behoove us to take any specific actions. And that's also important to understand when we're pursuing things like certification. One of the things that is really important to me as a manager is making sure that we're documenting as much as we can about the good work that's already happening here and that we already expect will be happening in the town and that we're planning for. I think that we started to identify a want for greater written plans and greater written documentation by discussing a couple meetings ago the economic development plan that we'll be moving forward with. And I think that this goes hand in hand. By requiring us to go through a certification process or by allowing us to, it gives us an opportunity to try and put more things down into writing as part of the application for the certification. And I think that's really important for a number of reasons. It's important to help us understand where we've been and how we got to the location that we are now, whether it's 10, 20, even 50 years from now. And it also helps us better communicate to the public what it is that we do here in Town Hall and at these meetings on a regular basis. So I do think that that's important. But like I said, the certifications, in addition to there being no cost to them, we don't have to pursue any particular item that we're not interested in. One of the items that I see here is develop an open space plan. If we're comfortable with not having an open space plan and not paying a consultant to come in and make use of that, it's okay. We can skip it. We don't need to participate in any one of these activities. Or we could say, in order to be a good town, we should really try and strive for all of these things, and this should be an idealistic goal. That's totally up to the budgeting process, to the board, to all the people who are involved with the town government. But this at least gives us an opportunity to have access to information, to roadmaps, hopefully some public and positive recognition and opportunities for funding. So I think that really summarizes everything that I wanted to convey to you. Actually, the last thing I'll say is we are required as part of, in order to join Sustainable Connecticut, you have to adopt a resolution. It's much like you pursuing any state grant. They do require you to show that there's some level of interest in being a sustainable community. So you'll see the second page in the packet that I gave you on this item is the sample draft resolution that they provided to us with some information about Winchester in particular that's been filled in. And as part of this resolution, we are required to identify two things. The first is a single person who will be the point of contact from the town to Sustainable Connecticut. After discussions with both Jen Perga, who is the ongoing chair of the Conservation Commission, and with Pam Columby in the Land Use Office, we've determined that between the two of them, they determined that the best person for that job would be Pam Columby, since she's in the office every day. She has an understanding of a lot of the different activities happening, especially on the development and the sustainability side, on the conservation side, I should say. And we're also required to identify a single group that will be really the steering committee for a certification if we choose to pursue it. As we're getting the Conservation Commission up and running, it's my thought that it could use a roadmap and a bit of a mission to help get it started. So my proposal to all of you is that we have both Pam Columby appointed as the point of contact, and we have the Winchester Conservation Commission appointed as the sustainability team as required by the Sustainable CT program. But are there any questions that you have about this?
Well, one of the things, Lyndon?
No, go ahead.
One of the things, I know you're appointing conservation, sustainable, and some of the things that you were talking about with the planning office and also with the Conservation Commission makes it seem like it's just about the environment. but it has other things in here as well. It has at the very top of it, it's, we have to optimize for equity, equity training, and down at the bottom of it, there's a whole lot of, making sure that there's optimum health and wellness opportunities, including housing, homelessness, et cetera. So, does it make sense to include anyone else on this that, for instance, our social service director, if you're gonna do that, because this sustainable isn't just sustainable in terms of, like I said, the environment piece. There's a whole lot more to this on here.
Absolutely. And what I'll say to that is it's my hope, and after talking with Jen Perga, it's my hope that she has an understanding enough of the program to be able to say, at this meeting, we're really hoping to talk about sustainability as it pertains to economic development or as it pertains to social services, and therefore we're going to invite in people to that conversation. It's not a perfect science, because my hope is that the Conservation Commission's able to take this on as the sustainability team, but obviously some of these things fall outside the strict lines of conservation. But I'm hopeful that they're able to take this on and that they're able to widen their scope to an extent permissible to them without having to create more town bureaucracy with another committee, another commission, and a lot of the same people interested in these items having to serve then on two groups instead of just one. But I would certainly be open if the board feels very strongly that that's not the right move, to move in a different direction on those assignments.
Jack, were you gonna ask a question?
Linda, you go first.
Well,
Wendy, go.
so, I'm not sure, I'm not quite sure, there's no fee, so completion of one equity toolkit in action 1.1.
Yep.
So there's no fee for a toolkit or?
No, and that's it's a little confusing language if you're not familiar with the program, but I can tell you that an equity toolkit, it's a packet of information that they'll put out online, and in order to obtain a certification, you really need to, what they ask you to do is to take one of the other actions on the list and to go through a checklist with it that helps you think about, is the action that we're taking equitable? Are we making sure that people of lower classes are able to access whatever service or whatever function it is of government that we're taking a look at? Are we making sure that it's accessible to people of different races, different genders, things of that nature? But it comes at no cost. It really is a workbook more than a toolkit.
So who will do that? Who will complete that toolkit? Pam and Jen?
It's my hope that as a group, the Conservation Commission would take some of that work on themselves. But beyond that, right, it would be town staff in the case of especially equity from a social services perspective, and housing is a large item in here. You would have your social services director, Katie Vale, involved. I would be involved with a lot of this, and I've already told Pam that I would be there certainly to be her deputy as she needs it. And Pam Columbia's also had the chance to look this over and has an understanding of what might be involved if we decide to pursue the certification program. So some of the issues or some of the quandaries that you've brought up so far do pertain specifically to the certification program, and if we decide to pursue that. And I'm happy to continue answering questions, and I do hope that we pursue the certification. But for the grant opportunities alone, I do hope that you will consider having the town join Sustainable Connecticut.
Well, I would just say what I like about it is that Winstead would be portrayed as forward-thinking, which I think has just started to happen over the last few years, rather than being sort of mired in different things. It would be something that was a little bit more progressive, that we might be ahead of something else, which is a nice thing. I mean, I'm not really, sure about all of how it will, unfold, but it would certainly be nice to have, to be known for sustainable practices and trying to come up with positive things rather than things that we've all been focused on for the beginning.
Josh, I spent some time looking at their website and going through some of the funding projects that have been already started and completed, and it appears that they also help with GoFunding.
Yes, so part of the matching grant program, one component of the matching grant program, does require, if you pursue that route, for a level of crowdfunding. So the idea behind that part of the program is to have community buy-in to what you're doing, and they believe, and the organization, the organization that they partner with, in order to offer those grants, really focuses in on the idea that sustainable items need to have that community buy-in, otherwise they're not going to be sustainable, they're not going to be preserved going forward, and they're not going to be invested in. So from that perspective, they do work with towns, and not just towns. I should also add that
Some of these projects were done by independent groups.
That's right.
That were not municipal related, but were volunteer groups that they put together.
And I'm really glad that you brought that up, because one of the other things I should share with you is that the grant opportunities are open to 501c3 and other nonprofit organizations within the town's limits, only if we join Sustainable Connecticut. Any nonprofit, like I said, 501c3 or otherwise, that exists within the town's boundaries would have an opportunity to take advantage of these matching grant funds and apply for them. But yes, there's a myriad of different opportunities for funding through the program, and crowdfunding is part of that.
The resolution that you're asking us to approve, if a month from now, 2 months from now, we find that the Winchester Conservation Commission is not the right organization, or that there may be somebody better than or different from Pan Columby, can this be changed, or is this resolution needing to come back to us and we have to do a brand new resolution to become part of the Sustainable Connecticut?
I believe that in order to technically, at some point, change the designation of what group will be taking care of this business, you would have to revise the resolution itself. However, at no time would we lose access to the resources and to the funding that we would have access to by joining. So if you decided in 2 months that you really thought that it should have its own committee or commission, then you would have an opportunity simply to bring it back and have it voted on here at a meeting, and that would be that.
The other question regarding the naming of a particular person, if that person leaves the job or something, that would have to be replaced by somebody else. So that requires also another resolution?
I don't actually believe in that case it requires a resolution. I will check in on that with Sustainable Connecticut, but I did see that happen in Waterford while I was there. There was a change, and the first selectman had been named at that time as the point of contact, and they did change it over to be the director of planning and development. And I don't believe that they brought a resolution back forward. So I believe that was acceptable to Sustainable Connecticut, because they can't expect that one person's going to stay in a position for a long period of time, whether they're elected, appointed, or hired. So I believe that they're more flexible on that end.
And this organization, Sustainable Connecticut, has been around for a while, 3 or 4 years, 5 years?
That's right.
I'm just surprised we haven't heard of it in this area, because most of the action has been on the eastern and southern part of the state. Is that because you said this was connected to Eastern Connecticut
That's
University?
Right.
They haven't reached out as far?
That's my guess, and that's my understanding. I personally know a couple of people who are involved with, either on a volunteer side or on the business side of Sustainable Connecticut, and if I had the opportunity to get to know them through the couple of towns that I've been a part of, where I've been a part of the group. But I know that some of their staff, perhaps even the majority of their staff, live on the eastern side of the state, because they are required to go to the Eastern campus a number of times. It did start at Eastern, so growing out from the greater Wyndham area, I would imagine that their plan all along was to try and move their operations into the western side of the state as a second or third phase of their operations. But there are several towns in this area, and there are 122 out of 169 towns that are a part of the program. I know Torrington is a part of the program now. I believe that they started not that long ago, and I was speaking with their Director of Economic Development about the fact that we might be able to work through some of these items in tandem. And however, some of the smaller towns immediately around us are not part of it. So I'm also hopeful that if we are able to project a desire to move in this direction, that maybe would inspire some others too.
Good.
I guess, because I've seen things come and go, you know, not just here, but professionally and stuff. You said they're tied to CCM? Are they tied to the state?
They have a partnership both with Eastern Connecticut State, and that's their connection through the state, and CCM, our partner organizations with them, but they are a separate nonprofit entity.
Right, so Sustainable Connecticut is a nonprofit, but they get their funding through private donations, through public grants, through how?
Their operations, my understanding, is a combination of public grants, private grants, the state through Eastern Connecticut State University, and CCM. The grant opportunities that we have access to are all privately funded.
And so, I guess when I read the materials you sent us, because I've talked to you about this before, and Bob had discussed this before too, and we, obviously I had, you know, looked a little bit at it. And when I look at all these topics and you have this proposal with the Conservation Commission, and then you talked about it being part of our economic development plan and part of, or like a roadmap for us, it seems to me that it should be more formalized within staff if this was gonna be effective. And it needs to be, I think, formalized within what your economic or strategic plan going forward with the town is. That, you know, includes the blight, includes, we're gonna do a housing plan. Because
Purchasing.
you wanna look up that, huh? Purchasing, all those kind of things. I mean, so I'm kind of feeling like, I know what the goals are, I know that they're good, you know, but, and I know that people, we have all sorts of reports and stuff here. And, you know, and recognition and all that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm just kind of a little like trying to figure out in my mind how this is all gonna fit together, and that we don't have sustainable over here, and then this over here, and then this over here, and then this over here. How's that all gonna come together if it's with just the Conservation Commission? Because everything else I look through in there, some of it touches planning and zoning, some of it touches wetlands, some of it touches other staff. So I guess I'm kind of like, you know, on the surface, do you apply for it and do you go into it because you do, and a few little things come out of it? But is it really going to be embedded? Is it going to be are these the goals that we have?
It's so, the list is so extensive, you have to first identify what areas you want to be involved in. Because, I mean, it goes from water and drought, municipal water use to, you know, homelessness. It's like hugely,
Well, is the issue having it under the Conservation Commission, or should there be a larger commission or larger group that takes ownership of this? Is that what your issue is, Candy and Candace?
No, I have no issue with this. I'm just saying it's a very long list.
Yes.
And you have to identify what pieces you want to address first. And then it probably would evolve.
Well, wouldn't that be, if we approve this resolution, that would be up to that group organizing it. If the Conservation Commission was to be the
Right, they'd have to,
approval.
I would assume they'd present it to us, since they're our board and commission.
Yeah.
Of areas that maybe we should start focusing on.
And it's my hope, you know, through this process, like I said before, that the Conservation Commission, as they take it on, would be able to really look through this, sit down and identify what are the strengths of us having access to all of these, who are the people we need to get involved, how do we get them involved, and create a system. I think that this program is going to succeed with a combination of staff efforts and volunteer efforts. I guess I have a similar thought behind this to the company that does some of the matching grants. I see more sustainability and more viability in something that we can get residents, volunteers on our boards and commissions interested and involved in than if staff is simply paid to work through the process. So I do see merit to what you've said, where obviously we need to have more people involved than just the Conservation Commission, Pam and myself. It's not going to work if it's in that small vacuum. But my thought in bringing this proposal forward to you is that the Conservation Commission, alongside Pam and myself, would work through the questions of who do we need to get involved, how do we do that in a helpful and productive manner, and that they would be able to tackle some of these questions as to how to move forward.
In your previous locations, did you work on something exactly like this? Did you put that together, did you say? I know you said you saw it in operation, but did you put it together too?
I did. I did. When I was on the Waterford RTM, I was the one who introduced the resolution to welcome Waterford into the program, and I was on the committee for a period of time, and I was a co-chair of the committee in Bolton. It was adopted just before, about the month before I started working in Bolton.
What kind of a committee was it?
In Waterford, it leaned a little bit more towards the staff side of things. They had, I think, 2 or 3 local volunteers, but the rest were either elected officials or they were hired staff members, and it was a group of about 15 people. In Bolton, it was a group of, I'd say, somewhere between 10 and a dozen, and it was pretty equal between, I think you had 6 or 7 staff members, and then on the other side, 5 or 6 town volunteers. It was, in both cases, they were their own separate committee. In our case, I know that between conversations that I've had, not just with myself, but other members of the Board of Selectmen, we have a lot of boards and commissions. It was my thought with this proposal that this would give some vitality and some direction to a reinvigorated Conservation Commission. But if it's your decision, or if it's your thought that this really should have its own group to take a look at it, I think that would be certainly a fine pursuit.
Well, we are reinvigorating the Conservation Commission, aren't we? I mean, I don't know, how many, do we just appoint somebody?
We're moving along. Yes.
So how many people on that commission now?
I believe we're up to 6, but Steve.
2, 3?
No. 9 on it before.
4?
No, there were 9
3.
on it before.
Yeah, because it didn't exist before, and I'm just, is this too much to give a reconstituted commission work to do right away?
Perhaps. I don't think there's anything, from my perspective, there's anything wrong with approving the program, letting them know that it's part of their next set of next steps, and also giving the public the opportunity to access the opportunities for funding while we're still in, designing our program, and also give access to our town staff for this roadmap. I know personally there are a number of different sets of documents that I would be very interested in having access to as we talk about road plans, as we talk about, and I'm looking, of course, at our Director of Public Works and thinking about things related to infrastructure, but certainly as I look to develop an economic development plan, there are documents that would be very helpful to the crafting of that.
I have no objection to it. I'm just questioning,
Of course.
the right group, and if it isn't the right group, there's just 3 of you now, and you and Pam. Okay, I'm good. How many did you find out are on right now?
I count 4 and 2 in the hopper,
Okay,
maximum of 7.
that's good. That's a good group. They'll be busy.
May I just suggest, are we still saving time on Saturday, August 7th to do a planning meeting?
And goals,
Yeah.
we need to get us all together to.
Yeah, do we want to move forward on this tonight? Is there a sense of urgency, or, can there be discussion on August 7th regarding this kind of thing and how we want to proceed?
Absolutely. I would be happy to wait if that's your preference.
Is there a reason, Steve, in your mind, to delay?
No, but I hear Candy asking about, talking about formalizing, and it doesn't sound like we're at a point of formalizing.
I mean, if you look through this list of things that are in here,
Yeah,
some of these can be really formal issues for town management and staff to do, and even as the board, and it's, and then how does it all, I still am looking at how it's all going to fit together, because you have a lot of things on your plate already. You don't, I mean, just today alone, I mean, look at the different things that came in. And, you know, we look at the lake and we don't, you know, the issues are there and we still don't have a staff person that oversees the lake. And should staff time be there instead of like here or somewhere else? And there's other things like the blight that we have initiatives on that we still need forward work on. There's still work on software that we need for permitting and other things that we still need work on. So when we add, if it's something that's within this sustainable Connecticut kind of thing that makes all these different things we're doing, what would signify a sustainable town, something that's gonna keep going off and, you know, happening in the future and continues to make us plan better, then I just, I'm not articulating anything well, I know that, because I'm trying to get my mind around this whole thing, how it's all going to make something concrete happen here versus, oh, it's another thing we talk about. It's another thing that happens. I know, Melissa, you were talking about recognizing that we're a forward-moving town, recognizing that, you know, people are doing good things out there. And, you know, a recognition program could also do that, but I just, and talking about goals and where we're going, I think is, within this, is some of the things that this board does. And so we could easily sign up, send it over to there, but are we really being sustainable if we do that? Or how does it fit? You know?
So you bring up some good questions, because I'm processing while you're talking.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess what I wonder, and I don't mind waiting until August if we all, when we're all sat down together, but maybe it's more of something where we're picking and choosing certain points of that and then finding certain projects, and maybe we're not really encompassing the entire, that entire list, because that entire list, you know, encompasses our whole town, and that's not really what they would probably be doing. So I think that maybe it's, and maybe that's the right, maybe that's not the right committee, like maybe it's a piece of all the different committees, because there's so many moving parts to that, I don't know. But I think that as you kept talking, I'm thinking that it's more, a little bit like the bookstore, which didn't maybe do as well as it could have in town, but was looking for the community support. Maybe it's a guideline to try to gather the community behind certain projects, but giving people the support to do that, because I don't think people always know how to go about getting the projects that they want to happen, like the dog park, the bookstore, the different things that everybody's always talking about on Facebook, or all the different dreams everybody and aspirations everybody has. So maybe we're not actually gonna fulfill every single thing on that list, but maybe we're gonna pick and choose a couple, and who we is, I don't really know. And we're gonna come up with some projects and go for certain grants and something like that. Like maybe we don't get the whole plan right away, but I'm happy to talk about it in August. We don't have to do this at 9 o'clock tonight, and it's fine, but, you know, definitely, I mean, there's a lot there to.
But the first step here is just to apply, right? It's not to seek out and make 50,000 points or 5 points. It's just to send our announcement that, yes, we are willing to join. Cost us nothing. We could join and do absolutely nothing after that. But it gives you an opportunity, I think you said, to investigate what other towns are doing, and it provides, I think you said, it provides you better insight into similar actions that you might want to take here. Did I read that correctly?
That is correct. You know, from my perspective, a con to approving it tonight, if none of you are settled with the Conservation Commission being the home of some of these questions, is that you will have to reapprove a resolution that looks like this with a few words changed at some point in time. I would hope that would be soon, because like you've all said, I think that these are good things to aspire to, and perhaps we need a little bit more work to figure out what roadmap we're taking before we decide on, you know, what some of those sub-goals are. But I think that's kind of the con to the pro that you just listed, Jack. I think that I certainly see both sides. I think that there are some good things that could come from approving it sooner rather than later, but waiting another month is certainly not going to, I think, make or break projects here in town.
Because this resolution is just supporting participation.
Right.
It doesn't say we have to do anything.
Correct.
And it just says, yeah, go ahead, you send in information to Sustainable Connecticut that we want to participate. You're allowed then to access information, and then from that point on, whether it's the Conservation Commission or group that you put together can take further action. Is that still what we're looking at here?
That is true.
I don't see any reason why not approving the resolution tonight, but if we all want to wait till August 7th, that's fine too.
What say you all? I would personally like to wait, to have a little more,
Yeah, August
Around
7th is 3 weeks away.
but it's
If
up to
there's no
all of
sense
you.
of urgency, I would prefer to wait myself.
Anyone else? There's more of you sitting here than,
I don't see any point in waiting. I mean, I think what it does is gives you an ability to look at your existing projects and are they sustainable? You know, do we want them to be sustainable? And unless you join, you're not gonna be able to get the information to be able to look at that. So if we're working on a long-term road plan or something else comes up, you know, we're building a new school, should we have had solar with it or not, or, you know, like, I don't know, but in order to be sustainable, you do have the opportunity to look at other, towns' projects and see if I did that, you know, I don't understand the crowdsourcing part, so. I'm only seeing municipal funds, I don't know how to get crowdsourcing funding for things that, but I don't know.
I could dive into that more either now or at another time if you wanted me to. But I will also say, if anybody has serious questions about the program itself, I do know that one of the liaisons from Sustainable CT, Jess Leclerc, would be happy to come in and give a presentation, either remotely or in person, if we asked her to.
My only suggestion, Steve, regarding waiting is that meeting has lots of other stuff that we could be talking about. This is a minor, all we're doing here with this resolution is saying, yeah, we'll participate. How we participate, that will be up to the organization that this Winchester Conservation Commission begins to formulate. But I don't see any worthwhile waiting till after August 7th. I'd go for it today.
Yeah, there's open-endedness here. It's not so specific that it ties our hands to do any one thing.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There's a lot of open-endedness to it. And I think I'm hearing you say, Josh, right? Even if we wanted to, a month from now, say, well, we don't want to participate in that, we could.
Yes.
So if this gives you the go-ahead to get going, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't make the resolution and pass it.
what do we get, like, access to that we can't have access to right now?
That is a fair question in terms of the information. You could argue that any of that's FOIA-able or possibly accessible simply by asking the municipality to hand it over. But it gives us a list of the different towns, a lot of the different towns that have already, actually all of them, that have already taken part in an activity. And I've used several examples so far, but for example, management of woodlands and urban forests. I'm just looking at this right here. For anybody for any town that has created a plan for either the conservation or the management of woods that they own, we would have an opportunity to go through a list of all of the towns that have participated in Sustainable CT, completed that action, and see documents that they uploaded to show the steps that they took to really document their activities on the subject. So it gives us an idea of even who to ask questions of in the first place. It gives us an opportunity to see the information that they put together that helped identify the steps that they took to be successful in that arena, and then the opportunities for funding. So even if we are not mobilizing enough to have the town apply for any funding in the near future, or at least in the next month or so, it would give nonprofits the opportunity to go onto the Sustainable CT website, log in, create their own accounts, and apply for funding if they so chose. And we would advertise that opportunity. I don't know if anybody will take us up on it. I haven't had people clamoring for matching grants from Sustainable CT, but I'm not sure how many people are familiar with it. So I think that it's a good opportunity, but if truly there's hesitation.
All right, I think we've talked it. I'll make the motion. If it passes, it passes. If it doesn't, whatever. I move that the Board of Selectmen adopt resolution number 21-50, supporting the town of Winchester joining the Sustainable Connecticut program.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor? All opposed? And I'm abstaining.
Thank you all for hearing that out.
We got a lot to talk about it.
We did.
Get going on it.
Makes Jim feel better.
Now you get going. Now you can get going.
Okay, item C is refunds as recommended by Collector of Revenue.
And we have just one for your consideration tonight. It is a total of $75.33 for motor vehicles. And it's due to a change of certificate. So I recommend that you approve the refund totaling $75.33.
May I have a motion, please? Anybody?
I'll
Thank
do
you, Linda.
I move that the Board of Selectmen authorize the refunds recommended by the Collector of Revenue in the amount of $75.33.
Thank you, Jack, for the second. You're on a roll tonight, Jack. All in favor? Unanimous? Next, we have the round of citizens' comments. Any of you? Seeing none, moving on to 12, selectmen's comments and reports. Anyone?
We're going country next Thursday.
Oh,
Actually, it's Thursday and the following Tuesday, so the concert in the park hopefully will be blessed with sun like they were the last time. We had over 100 people, and everyone seemed to really enjoy the band. And now we have a country band, and so does the Gilson. They have new live performances in the Gilson, so on Tuesdays, and they are having a country band coming in at the Gilson too. So we have Thursday and then the following Tuesday. Be exciting. Have a lot of live music, indoor and outdoor.
great.
Next week.
It's not gonna rain, is it?
Hopefully it won't.
Sorry.
It'll be another day like today, I hope.
Anyone else? Steve?
Move we adjourn.
There's that. Thank you, Melissa, for the second. All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you.
I saw Jim
Oh,
stick
it's
his
not.
foot out.
Petition. We haven't gotten it. No, it's people on Facebook.
You may run out.
So we don't, it's nothing we've received. It may be something we get in the future, but I'm just trying to be ahead of everybody. You know,